Thank you so much for being here. I want to say how excited I am to be among this group of extremely prestigious and important researchers. I'm so proud that we're doing such research here at Santa Cruz, and I'm very honored to be a part of this discussion. The Center for Monster Studies is an interdisciplinary research group at UCSC, and believe me, I am as surprised as you are to learn that that is the case. But we do exist, and we have, just want to make sure I got, okay, we have members from all over the disciplines, from PB-Sci to, well, I'll get into that in a minute. First of all, the question that most of my students want to know is, what is a monster? And this is an extremely important question. We define a monster as a cultural body rather than a physical one. So if we are looking for an actual cryptid or something like that, the Loch Ness Monster, that's not really our purview. That's biology. We don't do that. If a werewolf were to suddenly walk across the quad looking for a sandwich, that's not our problem, thank goodness. We're looking for the iteration of monsters as cultural bodies, and it's vitally important that we examine these because of two reasons. One is the way that monsters operate in our culture is unique among all other forms of representation. There are two ways to approach a monster. One is to see the other in the monster, in which case you set yourself up to legitimize atrocity against real people, or you can see yourself in the monster, which opens up a tremendous realm for psychological and even transcendent self-discovery, really honestly. So monsters obviously have been a part of our culture, all cultures, all over the world since the dawn of time, since before the prehistory. We have been worried about monsters. So they are a fundamental part of our culture, but we no longer feel the need in monster studies to legitimize our interest in this research. I think 5 years ago I probably would have come up here and said, oh, let me explain to you why I think this is a valid form of research. No, not anymore. Our students are living in a world in which they struggle every day in the midst of political chaos, in the midst of environmental collapse, in the midst of the continuing decline of our environment and our society, seeing a world that is full of monsters and trying to find a future for themselves that's a good one that has them in it, and they don't see it. So we no longer feel like we need to justify this work. The problem, as we see it, as Monster Studies sees it, is simply this: marginalization, ostracization, and persecution of peoples exists and is a tremendous, tremendous problem around the world. We're seeing it on the rise in the United States based on the number of hate crimes that have gone up in our culture in our society, in our nation, since 2016. A tremendous number of increase in those kinds of in that kind of violence. This is due in part to powerful cultural tropes that involve monsters. Okay, so for instance, when our leaders, our politicians, get up and associate a certain group of people, say immigrants, with monstrous qualities, monstrous behaviors, monstrous traits, that begins to legitimize our hatred of those and our fear of those subgroups, which then dehumanizes them and enables us to commit atrocities that we would normally never think that we would commit against another human being. I would never hurt another human being. I would, however, hurt a monster. So if I can convince people that monsters exist, that they are more than cultural bodies, that they actually exist, then I legitimize those kinds of behaviors, atrocious behaviors. However, and this is where it gets really exciting, those tropes can be subverted into powerful acts of resistance, jouissance, joyfulness, playfulness. Once again, if you look at the monster and see yourself. And this is the trick. UCSC, we believe, must understand monster culture and support acts of playful and performative resistance to it, the best of our ability. So let me just give you an example of how this works in real life. This is the Eviga Juda, the eternal Jew. This is a very old monster, probably begins its life in the 8th century in Europe. The Jew here is a Jew who was alive during the time of Jesus and who made a joke at Jesus' expense during the crucifixion. I often wonder about what that joke is. It's recorded differently in different places. I won't go into the different jokes that there are now, but I'm very interested in those jokes. The savior apparently turned to the Jew and said, "I hope you're still laughing when I get back." Okay. And he never died. The Jew never died. He just continued to wander the earth in poverty, in penury, in isolation. And until the 1930s, the eternal Jew was a figure of great pity and sympathy in the minds of the Europeans who believed in him. And they would leave out little plates of food for him. They would leave out little presents, little clothes for the eternal Jew as he was wandering through their fields and courtyards. Okay? But in 1933, this version of the eternal Jew became appropriated by the Nazis as part of their degenerate art exhibition that first appeared in Munich but traveled all over Germany. And wherever this degenerate art exhibition was exhibited, the hate crimes against Jews went up tremendously in each city. As you can see here, the Jew is embodying certain stereotypes of Jews. He has a very big nose. He has a protruding lower lip. I think that's very interesting. Scraggly beard, large ears, Eastern-style hat. He's got a hunchback. He's dressed as a pauper. He's got, even though he's dressed as a pauper, he's got a handful of gold, and it occupies all his attention, right? So you can see how these are drawing on harmful stereotypes of Jews. But he's also got a map of the territory that he wishes to conquer. In this case, it's a map of Germany, overprinted with the Russian hammer and sickle, which is to show that Jews are agents of communism and are going to use, supported by Russia, are going to take over Germany and turn it communist. However, here is a Russian version. As you can see here, it's the same character, right? There's the big nose, the protruding lower lip, the big ears, the Eastern-style hat, the hunched back, the pauperish clothes, and the bag of money that occupies all his attention. Right? In addition, there's a representation of the area that he wishes to conquer, in this case, a burning city. And the Jew here is, of course, sitting on a pile of skulls, just in case the point wasn't subtle enough. And the Russian there says Jew, person of contagion, the contagious person. Now, you may know this probably is not a completely unfamiliar image to those of you in the audience today, because, but I should say, this image, it became extremely impolite to circulate this kind of image in public after World War II and the revelation of the atrocities that the Nazis committed against Jews. This kind of representation of Jewish life is considered extremely anti-Semitic. You can see it if you go onto websites like Jew Watch and other anti-Semitic websites, but it's not generally held to be a part of polite modern culture anymore. We just don't do it. We just don't do it, or do we? This is Osama bin Laden after the 9/11 attacks. You can see here he's got a sign on his back that says Global Village Idiot, but if you look at him closely, you will see the nose, the lip, the ears, the oriental hat, the pauper's clothes, the money, and the map of the territory. This is the eternal Jew, just given a slight facelift in order to occupy the current voluminous hatred that needs to come out and that needs to be expressed at this time. But it's the same monster, you see? It's the same monster. And these monsters get then mapped onto real people, and real legitimate atrocity becomes inevitable. All right, so what are we going to do about it? Well, we create at UCSC, we've created a central clearinghouse for scholars from all over the disciplines and artists all over the disciplines who are doing research in this area. We provide a central sort of a headquarters where we can share ideas. We have the Festival of Monsters, which you may know about. We did the first one in 2019. It was called FrankenCon. That was a lot of fun. We set it up initially to mark the 200th anniversary of the publication of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, and we had a whole huge thing, but it actually increased in size in 2022. I'll tell you about it a little more in a minute. And a fiction writing contest sponsored by the Literature Department for students, horror fiction writing. We put out a podcast called The Show Where They Talk About Monsters. This is the first Office of Online Education podcast that has ever come out. So we're very proud that we're that inaugural podcast of that event. We're right now teaching, I'm in co-teaching right now with Dr. Renee Fox from Literature, a class called Exhibiting Monsters, which is actually going to put together how much, 2 minutes? Really? Okay, I'm going to go fast then. A course that is going to be connected to an exhibit at the MA that we're going to put together. We have an interdisciplinary faculty research group. We investigate video games and other digital media, tabletop role-playing games, which is one of the fastest growing area of popular culture right now, films, plays, comics, novels, and so on. We also use the center as a basis for fundraising and collaborations off campus. These are the kinds of professors that are involved with our work. Performance studies, game studies, both housed right now in the Department of Performance, Play, and Design. Literature, film studies, sociology, feminist studies, trans studies, history, computational media, and critical race and ethnic studies. We're involved, our work touches all of these areas, and I expect it could touch a lot more if we continue to get out there. This is a class I was mentioning. This is a co-production with the Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History. It's going to be up next year. Please come. It'll be up in October of 2023, along with the Festival of Monsters, a 3-day event featuring scholarly panels, performance events, the writing contest, as I said before, and our amazing Monsters Ball, which is a lovely event where you can come and dress in a costume. We did it in May this year, so it was Halloween in May. That was a lot of fun. But next year we're going to do it on Halloween. So that should be even more fun, even more spooky. The point I want to put across here is that nobody else is doing this. Here at UCSC, we are the only institution that supports this kind of interdisciplinary research. We have had attention from some of the most important monster scholars in the world, including Jeffrey Jerome Cohen, who wrote in 1996 an essay called Monster Theory 7 Theses, Monster Culture 7 Theses, which inaugurated this discipline. And I know I'm running out of time. He came out as a special guest last year, and he really wanted to point out that nobody else is doing this. How do we know we're succeeding? We have testimonials and endorsements. I'm going to skip at this. What do we need going forward? We need to engage more with these issues. We need to coordinate even more research among even more faculty in the university. We need bigger gatherings in terms of what the festival can be that needs to work on a regional and national profile. And we need to work to change the discourse about monsters and monstrousness through academic research and reach into pop culture to the extent that we are able, which includes being able to reach out to alumni who work in entertainment and media and talk to them about these issues. We want to establish a journal, the first Monster Studies journal. We have some other goals that we want to do, but I am out of time. I was also asked to talk about making a good interdisciplinary team today, but I've run out of time.
Yeah.
So I'd be happy to answer questions about that as we go forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So do we have any questions?
Fatal riddles, anecdotes, jokes, I'll take them all.
Did you have a question, John, or no? Anybody else? Anybody? Okay, well, oh.
Actually, hi, Michael. I am interested in the idea of what makes a good interdisciplinary team. You've given us such a wonderful account of what is interdisciplinary about the phenomena of the monster, the history, and the questions you might ask. But I think it would really cut across all of the various disciplines here to think about how we translate an object that is interdisciplinary into a kind of methodology that is interdisciplinary.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Kupan, for asking me that question, because it leads me perfectly to this slide. So first of all, as you point out, we have an object of study that can be approached from many disciplines, right? Monster studies is, by its very nature, interdisciplinary, because the monster intersects with so many other forms of research inquiry. The objects are also they're also transhistorical and transnational. So we look at, for instance, every culture on Earth has a ghost. So it's a very interesting thing to look at, is how the ghost appears in different cultures, how these monsters change over time in the same culture, moving across cultures. This creates what I call a monstrogenealogy, which is another terrifically interdisciplinary tool for looking at the effects of monsters on culture and the effect of culture on monsters. I think this is the most important thing. We don't assume that you can make a successful interdisciplinary team by shoving people from different disciplines together. This is not going to work. I learned this firsthand from experience, trying to put together an interdisciplinary team from people who were from different disciplines but who were not themselves interdisciplinary people. You really need to find a team of people who are willing to cross those boundaries, willing to shake those borders and shiver those orthodoxies that separate us, I think, artificially from doing collaborative work. And then finally, we cultivate a variety of settings in which we can share our research, develop our core values, share our ideas, and sometimes those take the place of getting together and playing tabletop role-playing games, that kind of thing. So it's really effective. Thank you very much for that question. I see another hand over there, a couple more hands.
Just a quick question, if the exhibition at the MA might be coming to the CESNON at a later point?
Sure.
Or even like a smaller subset group could be great to have our students go and see it right on campus. So.
I'd be happy to do that, absolutely, yeah.
Hi, I just have a question about maybe it's like a naive question, but do you have a clear definition about what is a monster and what is not? I might ask question because I can imagine I have many virtual image in many literatures. Some of them are just virtual, but they are. I'm not not sure how do you define the monster or not.
The question, thank you very much for that question. The question of how to define a monster is one of the chief questions in monster studies. Because people also call other human beings monsters. People say, oh, that politician is a monster. He put in a policy I don't like. Or, oh, Jeffrey Dahmer is a monster because he, X, Y, and Z, right? What we're looking at specifically is cultural bodies, right? So we're looking at representations, manifestations of monsters in cultural products specifically, right? So that brings our ability to do cultural studies directly into that kind of work. Like I said, if the monster actually walks across the campus, that's not what we're looking at. But I think that the definition of what a monster is can be expansive enough that it can include a lot of things that you might be interested in, might be curious about. So get with me later. I have a 90-minute lecture on what is a monster. So it's very hard for me to put it into a short period of time. But thank you so much. Thank you.